All right. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another broadcast. So glad that you guys can join us for another live broadcast. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. Today is August the 12th, 2024. And another wonderful day out here, coming out to you live from the beautiful state of Arizona. And another nice one out today. Nice to us. 100 degrees. 100 degrees where I am, but it's still nice. I mean, trust me, when you've had days where it's like 115, 118, this is nice. Okay, it's pretty nice out, but you still want to wait till it gets a little bit cooler before you start doing anything of significance outside. And so, but it's nonetheless is nice. I see somebody's already providing answers in the chat, and welcome to any and all people that's in the chat. What I am asking for you today, before you jump to any conclusions, that you wait to hear the whole matter. Now, if you're someone that don't have the time to hear the whole matter, then that's okay. This is not the time for you to listen. But I will also put this out here as well. Where you think my conclusions are going to be, they're not. If you think that, this is a broadcast where he's going to be shading black women and throwing nope, not at all. You can't find now one broadcast where I've done that. And typically what happens is people will look at the title or they'll look at the thumbnail and they're already just doing a Olympic nosedive into the pool because they believe what the conclusions are, what they believe the conclusions are going to be. But we're not going to do that. We're going to take our time here. This is not TikTok. And I've already kind of settled in my mind is that I'm not going to allow myself to, I got to speed things up because I'm going to lose somebody. I'm not going to do that. I am going to take time to explain things. And I'm going to do that. I do see the effectiveness of, doing the shorts and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's important for people to hear the whole matter. And that's what we're going to stick to here. So that's what I encourage you to do for this particular broadcast, because this one, I'm actually looking forward to getting into this one because there's so many different nuances that we have to kind of look at in order to understand the topic that we're going to be going over, which is, number one, we're going to be talking about, is the black church, we're not even asking. I'm pretty much concluding based on the numbers that the black church is in fact a women's organization. Now, now some people may think that that's a bad thing. I'm not necessarily concluding that. Okay. But when we look at the numbers, which I'll have on the screen in a little bit, it definitely has all the markers of it being an organization that's geared towards women. And I think we got to be honest with that. Okay, so we're going to talk details about that. The next thing we're going to get into, that's going to lead us into the next conversation, and that is Kirk Franklin recently posted a video where he was having a conversation with someone, and in the conversation, he was talking about how within the church, how young women are pressured into getting married. And you're going to see how this first topic that we're going to talk about, how it's actually connected to that topic. And so we're going to get into that as well. And is he right? Is he on to something? Is it a little dated, what he's saying? Well, we're going to find out. Okay. Again, don't assume what you think where I'm going. Okay. Because I think for some of y'all, might be a little bit surprised. Okay. And then finally, we're going to look at, I came across a really interesting video. It was from the it's a organization that looks closely. It studies, the whole purpose of this organization is to look at the impact of illegal immigration. And they actually had two black women that were on there that were laying it all down. And I thought they did an excellent job in explaining the impact that immigration, or I should say illegal immigration, has had on the black community. And I think what they had to say was very important. So those are that's going to be more on the news segment. but we're going to talk more of the feature. We're just starting off with the features, at the top here. But I do want to bring something to your attention before we dive into this, is that right now we just kicked off our back to school immunity sale. All right. Back to school immunity sale over at sombertree.com. And that's the code right there. You see on the screen there, it says Boost Well. It's all one word, Boost Well. Guess how much you're going to save in this one? 18%. 18% store wide. That's a lot. 18% store wide. You will save over on sombertree.com starting now. Now we're going to have an email that's going to go out a little bit, I think tomorrow. And in the email, we will have some, and we're going to have a giveaway or something free or something. We're figuring that out right now. But it will behoove you to make sure you go to sombertree.com right now. Make sure if you're not signed up for the email, make sure you sign up for it. So that way you can get access to the freebies or whatever it is that we're going to be including in that email. Okay. And so while we're doing this, while we have this boost immunity sale, back to school immunity sale, well, the children, they've been out and playing in the sun, hopefully, and around family and all that. So they've been doing quite well during the summer season. At least most of children have been. But now, what happens once they get into start going back to school? All of a sudden now they start getting sick, and all of a sudden they start catching little colds and all of that stuff. Well, you need to be prepared for that. And so there was an article that just popped up, matter of fact, as I'm talking to you right now. Let me see if I can find this. Is right here. Where's that article? Here we go. Let me see. Get this up here on the screen. Anyway, it's right here. Right here. Not there. That's the site. Okay, so we're gonna go here. Yeah, there you go. That's it right there. New York Post, they just posted this today. They said generic version of Mucinex sold by CVS, Walmart, Walgreens, and Target contains cancer-causing chemicals. What? The generic version of the popular cold and allergy medicine Mucinex, which is sold as an in-store brand at CVS, Walmart, Target, and Walgreens, contains the cancer-causing chemical benzene, according to the report. Benzene, a colorless flammable. What? A flammable? Hold on for a second. I mean, it's funny, but it ain't funny. Hold on. Let me make sure I read that right. It says benzene, a colorless flammable. Okay, we can stop right there. Okay. Liquid that has been used to make plastics, synthetic fibers, household cleaners, gasoline, and rubber has been linked to diseases such as leukemia and lymphoma. What? The brand name, the brand name version of Mucinex, which is sold by the British pharmaceutical giant Reckitt. Yeah, Reckitt, as in wrecking your immune system. Benckiser, I hope I'm saying that right, group uses a white powder called carbomer, which creates the extended release effect that helps ease symptoms over a 12-hour period as an inactive ingredient that does not contain benzene. But an analysis by Bloomberg News found that the carbomer used to make the generic version sold by the large retail pharmacies in the U.S. does indeed contain benzene. And then it goes on. So this is what they're putting in medicines for our children. And for you, for the adults, for everybody. So if you getting that allergy thing that's starting to kick in for you all of a sudden now, and then, people will automatically reach to their stuff, right? Which, they go for the medicine. Where's my medicine? Let me get my medicine going on. And so they get that. I'm sorry, I'm getting my, setting this thing up here. So anyway, so they said they get this thing and they get this medicine and they're taking it and they're totally trusting that, oh, because it looks like it's professional, the labeling and all of that, and I saw the commercial, it must be good for me. Not realizing that there's a high probability, depending on what you're putting, what's in it, you might be adding something. You're adding plastics, you're adding flammable stuff, all that foolishness in there. So for us here, one thing about this platform, if you're brand new, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. So glad that you're here. One thing about this platform is that, do we talk a lot? Do we have a lot of videos and stuff? Absolutely. We sure do. But for those that have been following us for some time here, you know we just don't talk here. We actually have a solid record of actually doing and producing and giving solutions. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we're not just sitting here just talking and, oh, look how bad the government is. Oh, the sky is falling. Oh, these white people. And, oh, we poor, we broke and all that stuff. We ain't going to spend time in that arena, okay? We will talk about the problems, but we will also look at solutions. And so it's in that spirit that we came up with Samba Tree, sambatree.com. Take the time to go to the website and you're going to see we got tons of stuff on that site that are all natural. We're about natural. You know, nature is out there for a reason. There's all kinds of things in nature that is designed for our bodies so that our bodies can operate at its maximum. Okay? We don't need to go to the chemical people. We just go right to nature. And as I'm talking to you right now, I remember, this is about a couple of years ago. We actually had a couple. Actually, we actually had a couple of what you want to call it, classes that we had on this platform, teaching people how to forage what's in your own backyard, how to find the medicines that are growing literally in pretty much all of y'all backyards right now. Yeah, those weeds that they tell you that's weeds, they're actually medicines. And so we had somebody come on and teach us on a weekly basis how to identify those things, how to, to get it and to store it so that you and your family got all the medicine that you need. So it's things like that. We also established a group of different people who have that background in when it comes to herbs and natural medicines. And then we have people in the medical field and all that. And we put all of this together. And then it was a wonderful group that we have for a long time where people can come to that group and get the information they need regarding whatever sicknesses or illnesses or whatever that they were dealing with. And you had some wonderful people that were there that was running that thing, able to help and provide a service for the people so that we're not just doing this, but we're actually providing some real solutions. So that's what we're all about on this platform here. Okay. And so that's what we specialize in, is really focusing on what are the solutions. Stop talking. What's the solutions for this? I've said many times before, my goal is to completely to get as many black folks as possible out of the hospitals. I want all of my black folks out of the hospitals. That's what I want. And that's my goal. That is my life goal, is to get as many black folks as possible out of these hospitals. Number 2 is to eradicate high blood pressure and diabetes, because those two things are low-hanging fruit and we can easily do it. So it's with that spirit is why we established sambatree.com. And so if you take the time and go through the site, you will see for yourself that there's a whole lot of things, ranging from things you take internally, things you can put on your skin and your hair, all that stuff. And we're constantly adding stuff as we come along, some great stuff. And we always test it out in our home lab first, which is right here on the other side of this camera here. This is our home lab, because if it passed the test in this house, we know you're going to like it too. So that's what we do here. You got something to add here?
Hey, family. I just came back into town last night, okay? I was on 4 planes And when I tell you 4 planes in 48 hours, maybe, but when I tell you that people were coughing and hawking and spitting and hacking, and I mean, it was just, they were just coughing all over the place. And these were productive coughs, okay? These were phlegm producing coughs. And I was just like,
They were juicing.
yeah. Yeah, they were juicy, okay? And I was just like, what in the world? It was a lot. It was a lot. And this is the time of year when, it starts kicking up. All right. Well, actually, we're getting towards the end of August. Once you get towards the end of August, you start moving into September. This is when, we start seeing, a little bit more colds, more flus, whatever, what have you. Some people may say that's detoxing. That's good. No problem. Help your body detox then, But as far as the children are concerned, you can refresh that, Dwayne. As far as the children are concerned, some of you that you do have children that are in the public school, or whether they're in charter school, or whether they're in, whether they've been homeschooled, this is the time when they are, maybe like Dwayne said, they've been out in the sun, they've been playing and doing their thing. But now they're getting back, even if it's not in the classroom, they're back into their dance classes and your homeschool co-ops and whatever it is that they have going on, and then they bring it back home bring it back home, So we had some people ask, are there any coupon codes? People were emailing in July, because normally we have a big sale in July, but we didn't do that this year. And people were asking, do you guys have any coupon codes? Like, where's the sale? So we're doing a back to school sale, 18% off. That includes bulk items as well. Okay. So if you want to, stock up, get things at a discount, get discount on top of the bulk discount, this is the time. This is the time to do it. But yeah, the planes were crazy. And these people it was really, really, really something. It was really something. People are sick out there, y'all. They're sick. It's something. Their immune systems are compromised. I'll put it like that, All
right. So there you go. So thank you. Appreciate that. So again, it's sambatree.com. I got the site up here, so you can check that out. There's a whole lot more. I'm not going to prolong this, but again, 18% off store wide. Make sure you check that out and take advantage of that. Okay. So we're powering through because we want our children to be well, and not just small children, but even in the college world. You got some of y'all got kids in college right now. We want to stock up for them too. So again, the website one more time is sambatree.com. Appreciate it. So anyway, good to see everybody in the chat. So glad that you guys are here, and we're going to go ahead and dive in, and we're going to talk about what we're talking about. Is the Black church a women's organization? So I'm asking that, but I was pretty definitive on that title, is that it is, for the most part. Now, is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing? Well, let's take a look and let's get into it. Okay. So let me pull up this article here that I came across. I think it's safe to say, before I even show any article, that for the most part, we all know that a majority of who we see in the church is women. When we talk on this platform here, we're speaking the Black church. Let me be specific, okay? The church in general, I would probably say that that's still the case, but it's very definitive when you get into the Black church, that a good percentage of who you see in those pews, in the pews or whatever, it will be women. You'll see mostly women in those pews there. This is an article that I came across. This is about 3 years old, but it's still very relevant. And let me pull this up here. And it says, women have often been called the backbone of the Black Baptist Church, making up 70% of the church congregation, according to Pew Research. We can stop right there for a second because, like I said, the numbers don't lie, do they? 70% of the Baptist church. Now, when they say the Black Baptist church, Baptists, most black people identify with the Baptist, fold, if you will. So this is a good portion of black folks who are members of a church. Most black people that are part of a church, in this country at least, tend to skew towards the Baptists, right? I know we have Kojic. I know we have Holiness. I know we have with some of the other, we have Kojic, Black Baptist, AME. That's the other one I was thinking of. But Baptist really, by and large, really represents a good portion of what we call the black church. Now, according to Pew Research, 3 years ago, 70% of those that are part of the congregation are women. And the article goes on to say that, however, they only make up a small percentage of church leadership. So we know that the Bible, and they kind of mention something here. It says, first, it says Timothy 2:12 reads, I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet. And, there's different verses like that you'll find in the New Testament when it comes to the layout of the church. And, that it's really when it comes to leadership, it tends to be the men, right? Men tend to be the ones that are in leadership. But however, what you will find when we look at today, however, the layout of the church, did someone like a Paul or Peter? Again, if you've been following us on this platform, my question is, did they even exist? But that's a whole nother thing, right? But do we think that they were writing with the construct or with the context of most of the church was made up of women? I don't think so. Because the way the letters and stuff are written, it seems like there's an even balance mention of men and women, right? And in the New Testament, they also mention, there's a couple of cases where they do mention of women holding some type of leadership, right? So it's a hodgepodge. I'm not going to get into the weeds, the biblical weeds of this. Are women supposed to be in charge and all that stuff? I'm not going to get into the weeds of that because that's a never ending conversation in of itself. But what I do want to focus on is looking at where we are today. All right. When you do look at the church, when you look at the attendees, many of these attendees, church members, many of them, although they will claim that, hey, listen, the Bible says it, I believe it, and that settles it, and I'm not going to deviate from what the Bible says, and that's it. At the same time, you will see many cases where people who do attend churches, regardless if they're male or female, will adjust interpretations based on the situation. You understand what I'm saying? And so, case in point, for example, when we talk about the black church, for example, the church, the Bible is very clear about, its stance when it comes to effeminate men, right? However, when you look at the who's leading praise and worship in most of these cases, what do you see? Effeminate men, right? The Bible is also very clear. Now, this is getting into Old Testament, if your children are lying, and how you supposed to treat them. Something along the lines of taking them outside the camp and stoning them to death, right? Well, this is 2024, and so you will not see. So you're going to see people adjusting things based on, be it whatever the ruling government is at this time, or just time the way it is, period. You know what I'm saying? And because there's some things that people aren't going to do. Another example I'll give you is that staying along the lines of LGBT, homosexuality, the church is also very clear on its stance, or rather the Bible is also very clear on that. But when you look at the members of these churches, a lot of them tend to vote how? Democrat. And so the Democrat Party tends to be very pro that lifestyle, very pro that lifestyle. And for anybody to come in and say, well, I don't vote for that, I vote for this. If you're voting for a candidate that says that they stand for all of these things, you are by default supporting those things. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I remember, listening to black folks years ago when Obama was running. Well, I'm not voting. I know Obama's view on abortion, but I'm not voting for him on that. I'm voting for him because he's a black man. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, and I said, you can't take little things out of your vote. When you go to the poll, you can't say, my vote, I'm only giving him a fifth of a vote. It doesn't work that way. So that means every bombing that took place under his watch, you shared a part in that. And that's Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. You are co-signing on their policies, regardless of who you vote for, regardless in this case, if it's Trump, if it's Kamala, it doesn't matter. Your vote it's saying it's a declaration, a public declaration where you are saying, I co-sign on this person and what they're doing, what they are going to do in office. That's what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So that's why the whole voting thing is very serious. But anyway, so you have a lot of people within these churches that co-sign on these policies, particularly in the area of, let's say, LGBT, right? And so when you look at, so getting back to this, so when you look at the layout, the demographic, as I just showed you, of the Black Baptist Church, 70% of the church is made up of women. Can we honestly say that this is an organization that's geared towards the needs of men? Can we honestly say that at this point? Now, notice as I'm going through here, I'm not blaming anybody, nor am I saying it's right or wrong. Okay? I'm not alluding to anything. I'm speaking to you just very direct. When you just look at the numbers itself, can we honestly say that this organization, when I say organization, I'm speaking the Black church, okay? And that encompasses the different denominations that are targeting the Black community, or that are, you know what I'm saying? So that's when I say the Black church, that's what I'm focused on, okay? Can we honestly and truly say that, that the Black church is an organization that truly caters to the needs of Black men? I would say based on those numbers alone, no, absolutely not. Now, is that an issue? Is that a problem? Well, let's go into this further. Now, traditionally, when we go back when we look at the history of the church, the Black church, it did encompass men and women, and, you pretty much had, it was somewhat even. Now, here's the thing. When you look at the church in of itself, the church system in of itself, and I want to specifically stay within the realm of the Black church, and now I'm bringing in the white church with an asterisk, okay? When you look at the church, okay, the church structure, most of the time, what takes place during a service when they have a service, right? When they have a church service, what typically happens? Well, you have praise and worship. Hey, everybody, saints, welcome to, church. We're so glad that you're here. And ushers come down and greet the people and all that stuff. And then they open up with a boom. They got to open up with a boom, praise and worship, right? To get people excited, get all excited because I'm telling whatever, right? And then they get into that. Then someone comes up and gives announcements, right? And does the welcome, and maybe they do a prayer, and then someone else comes in, hey, I want to welcome you, la, 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 la. And then they'll do praise and worship, and they get you all worked up. Praise and worship, praise and worship, praise and worship, right? So they do all of that. They get you all pumped up for that. Then after you got pumped up, now you're ready to give. So now you are giving your money, okay? So now they're asking for your money. So now you put your money in the bucket, right? After they do that, then they'll have a special service, a special songstress. that comes up and they'll do a special song selection, right? After they do that, then what? Then it's, all right, then they bring you down, and then it's the pastor comes out. Hey, everybody, turn in your Bibles to such and such, such. So the pastor usually spends, things have changed now. I grew up in a time where the pastor would be up there for an hour and a half. Now it's, 20 minutes because people got short attention spans these days, right? So they got to get it in, get it out. Then they'll preach. In my time, after they preach, they have an altar call, and then after that, you're gone. Now, I forgot to mention one thing. One of the offerings is if there's a need for it, they may say, hey, listen, we got we're trying to build a new building, or we spotted a building in the community that we've had our eyes on for some time now, because it's so cramped up in here. We need more space up in here. We got vision, we got dreams, we're trying to do something. So depending on the church, they'll have a, building fund, right? So they collect money for that. And sometimes they're building a building from the ground up. Other times they are simply, what are they doing? They're buying a pre-existing building, right? And that's it. And I took you through all of that just so that we're all on the same page. Now, let me speak to you for a moment as a man, all right? All of that I mentioned to you, it doesn't address what men naturally bring to the table. See, men, we like to listen and we'll get instruction. But we also want to take that instruction and we want to do something with it. We want to go and build something. Case in point, let's talk about the Amish. The Amish, this is a good example. When you look at the Amish people, you know what they do? Now, the Amish are a very religious culture. It's a religious-based culture. For example, when somebody gets married, you know what they do? All the men get together and they'll build a barn. They call it a barn raising. And they go out and get the lumber and they will spend the whole day hammers, nails, drills, whatever they need, and they will build a barn from the ground up. And by the time it's finished, everybody just happy and all that stuff. So they actually built something. They made a difference. And then the women folks, they're contributing too. They're doing the cooking and all that. And listen, if you've never been eating food come from the Amish folks, you missing out. Cause them folk, I know this. They done stole some slave recipes. I'm serious. But anyway, but they contribute in their part too. So they're physically doing something. Now, let's take, for example, if you had a church, let's name, I don't know. Let's name Charlotte. I don't know. I'm just naming the town. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if you had a church that said, okay, we're going to roll out the map after we done finished preaching. We done finished preaching and we did all of that. Okay, now men afterwards, okay, we're going to let everybody else go home, but men, let's stay back here for a second. Or maybe you can come back later. We're going to have a planning meeting. And what we're going to do is and what's the plans? Okay, we're going to talk about it. All right, so we're going to lay out a map of Charlotte, North Carolina. And what we're going to do is we're going to spot out all the hot places in Charlotte. We're going to identify the areas where the crime is the highest. And we're going to also identify the places that have the most poverty. And what we're going to do is we're going to build points in those hot places. We're going to secure a building, small building in these hot places, and we're going to own it. We're buying it outright. And in these hot places, we're going to, this is going to be a combination of kind of like a security zone, right? Because we're dividing up the area by zone. We're doing that. We're not waiting for a government initiative to do it. We're going to do it ourselves. So we're going to take the tithe and offering money that we've been collecting all this time, and we're going to put it towards these smaller buildings. They will not be churches. We're saying security zones. I don't know. I'm just naming something right now. You can name it whatever you want. And in these buildings, they're small buildings. Basically, the building itself, we're going to have our own security team. We're going to have our men, our elder men, who are going to make sure that throughout the day, they're walking the streets and making sure everything is cool. And if they see somebody acting up, they see some kids acting up, they're going to bring some order. You ain't got to walk around with guns. You don't even have to do that. You're going to use the authority that you have as a man in your voice to bring some order. And that can be done. I'm not saying I'm anti-gun. That don't get me wrong. But it's not a good idea to start a conversation with a gun. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you can be packing, but you don't have to be like, okay, now y'all better get back. No. You ain't got to do all that. Right. So anyway, you have that. Then you also have a garden in this same building, behind, in the backyard, front yard, or whatever. You got a huge garden where you are growing produce so that those in that area that are lacking in the area of getting fresh fruits and vegetables, now you've established a place where the people can get fresh fruits and vegetables. And you're also inviting the community to come in to take part in growing those fruits and vegetables, right? And then based off of the success of that, now you're working hand in hand, let's say, with the sisters who may have a homeschool network. In a homeschool network, now you're working hand in hand. So children that need to be homeschooled, now the church has established a whole homeschool network that you can start funneling the children into the homeschool network where they're getting all the resources and the tools that they need. And then with that, you're also connecting them with real people in the community so that they can, continue on in their education, not just in the books, but also just in real life experience. You understand what I'm saying? Now, what I just went through was just me just throwing this out here. Now, if you as the church, if churches were doing that kind of stuff, I guarantee you would have a higher rate of male involvement in the churches. Because why? You're doing something. You're building. No real man wants to spend all day. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, glory. Oh, glory. No real man wants to do all that. That ain't building nothing. That ain't solving nothing. Oh, God. Hey, baba. Oh, no real man does that. But that's what we push all the time. Did you get, I'm waiting for pastors. He coming out with another book. He got another book coming out and y'all just waiting for pastor. I remember going back. This is New Birth. I was part of New Birth. We were actually members of New Birth. This is back when Eddie Long was alive. Before the stories came out with him messing around with little children. But let me tell you something. At that time, we were obviously living in Atlanta and all that. I was so desperate I was living in Duluth. Anybody familiar with the layout of Georgia or Atlanta area, you know where Duluth is. Duluth is like way north of the city, right? It's right outside the perimeter, right? You take 85 and you can get to Duluth that way. So, and to get to New Birth from there, 40 miles maybe. It might have been even more than that. It was quite far. But they started having these, I remember he got up there and he said, yeah, we're going to have a morning workout and prayer with the men. I was so desperate to have fellowship with other men. I was getting up 4 a.m, 4:30, whatever it was, early in the morning. And I would drive like 40 miles out. This is before I even went to work. 40 miles way out of my way. And we would get out there and they would in the morning and then they were doing exercises and stuff like that. And then after that, he would go in and just have a short devotional and that was it. And I was so desperate. I was like, man, I just need to be around some brothers. You know what I'm saying? And let me tell you something. That was okay for a minute, but then my eyes started opening to see the amount of men that were just like puppy dogs behind this man. Oh, this pastor right there. What he got for us now? Where's pastor? Is he around? Does he see me? Okay, 1, 2. And it wasn't even like effeminate stuff, but it was just the action. It was just the attitude. I'm talking about strong, like men. But it wasn't, but when it came to like actually, okay, let's do something. It was like, is pastor going to be there? Is pastor going to see me? It was that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, hell, I can't. No, let me get out of here because I can't. No, Well, I got to have pastor looking behind me and helping me. No, What can we do? Pastor got his thing. What can we do? That was my thing. And I was like, nah, let me get up out of here. You know what I mean? And I was done with that. And that's what you see a lot of, and then it came out what he was doing. And, and I guess it got worse then. But a lot of what you see, are there initiatives to kind of address some of the needs of men in these churches? Yeah, there's some. But what far outweighs that is the attention that has been placed on women. Again, am I saying that's a bad thing? Please hear what I'm saying to y'all. Don't get in your feelings, okay? Because another thing I want to mention is that one of the things that we have been gifted with as men is the ability to bring order where we perceive that there's disorder. Now, follow what I'm saying now. So what we're doing is we're looking at the church and we're giving it trying to be fair assessment. And we're saying, okay, let's look at what the church has been doing all these years. How has it been performing? All right. So that we can now recalibrate the expectations that we have for the church. Because see, the problem is that I think the expectations that we have of the church are unrealistic. It's unrealistic for me to expect an organization that's made up of 70% women to have any kind of the tools that are needed to really address the needs of men. It's impossible. That would be crazy for me to assume that. But here we are. We do that today, don't we? We still have this belief that somehow the church is there for that. Now, when we look at scripture, however, scripture does tend to push a more male-centered leadership. And so this is why you see in, like articles like this. Let's see here. Pull this up here where you have, black women who are talking about, this is prominent black church in New York sued for gender bias by women who sought to be its senior pastor. You can look this article up on your own. It's a very interesting read. And basically what happened is that this woman by the name of Ebony Marshall Terman, she applied to be the replacement pastor for Abyssinian Baptist Church in New York. And long story short, she didn't get selected. So her assumption was she didn't get selected because she's a woman. Now, you can come up with any conclusions on that you want. Like I said, again, there's certain things I'm not going to get into the weeds of on this. But she does bring some very interesting points. Her argument. I'm not one to throw out when you honestly read it and try to see it from both sides. I don't think she's crazy for thinking that. You understand what I'm saying? And the reason why I say that is because of this. Now, again, you may be listening and say, well, the Bible says that, first of all, no women are supposed to be ruling men, period. Well, first of all, a pastor ain't ruling over jack. And so let's get that language out of here. You ain't my ruler. So some of y'all who watch me, and you may be still part of the church, one of the problems too is that you see your pastor as a ruler. Okay. He better not be a ruler of your house. Do you understand what I'm saying? No, sir, and no, ma'am. So let's get that language out here. So that's number one. Okay. But anyway, let's get to, so with, in this case here you have this woman who wanted to be, he was going for being a pastor. And based on what she was saying, she was talking about how there were certain questions that they were asking her that weren't really being asked of the men. Long story short, they didn't choose her. I think in the final pool, they went with another man. They went with a man or whatever, and that's it. So, you know, she's pissed off or whatever. But there's a little more history to her because, again, she's tied into Union College in New York. And if you follow us, we've talked about that extensively. Union College is the birthplace of womanism, which is the black version of feminism and all of that. We've talked about that in great length. And so it makes sense why she's trying to make that argument. But does she have a point when it comes to, you know, leadership? Should there be women leadership, increase women leadership in the church? Now, I'm going to answer quickly and say yes. Absolutely. I believe that based on the numbers. Now, again, you may say, well, but the Bible says this. Okay. Yeah, the Bible says a lot, as I said earlier. But time and time again, and again, we're talking the black church now, has found no problems in updating, if you will, or reinterpreting certain scriptures to fit whatever narrative that they want to fit. They've never had a problem with that. Again, like I said, again, same-sex marriage. The black church will find some kind of way to, under the table, be okay with that. You understand what I'm saying? Let's be honest here for a second. The black church will find, the Bible is very clear about, you shall have no other gods before me, right? But there are many black churches that will proudly have Delta Day or Alpha Day. You have preachers or pastors who are proudly part of Masonic orders. And then you have some of the, and many of the church women, the mothers, who are part of Eastern Stars. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to go that route, if you're going to bend on those areas, why all of a sudden you're going to get stiff when it comes to increased leadership of women being seen in leadership? Why are you going to get stiff when it comes to that? If you're going to, if you're going to be flexible in this arena, on those areas, some of those areas I just threw out, what's wrong with that? See, my thing is this, is that when you really want to talk, you know where male leadership really begins? It doesn't begin in the church. It begins in the home. And the home is what really the focus should be on, not an external organization. That's the problem that we have, is that many people see the church as part of the home. In other words, it's like you got a home and then you got that fourth bedroom, and the fourth bedroom, well, that belongs to the church. No, the church doesn't belong in the house at all. That's something you may go to. You may, try to, practice the stuff that the church teaches. But at the end of the day, no, pastor stays outside. You understand what I'm saying? All that stays outside. They should not have any rule over the affairs of what goes on in your house. Not at all. And so, so getting back to this point, is there an issue? Do I see so is the church, in fact, a women's organization? Well, like I said, based on the numbers, based on the fact that when we do look at the church, I thought I had another article here, maybe not. Oh, well, I'll just say this. Based on the history of the black church, what we have seen is that time and time again, women are the ones that are the ones that are always giving. If they're not giving of their time, they're giving of their money. They're always the first to defend the pastor. The women have been, when I say holding down the fort, so to speak, when it comes to the church, they absolutely have been doing that. Absolutely. They have been the ones that have been doing the work when it comes to the church. By and large. I'm not saying that men haven't, but by and large, black women have been the ones that have been holding down the fort, defending the fort, have been doing all, like the saying goes, they're the chief cook and bottle washer. Well, I'll say cook and bottle washer. The chief position has always been reserved for the men. So again, 70% according to that Pew Research, of the black of the Black Baptist Church, they're saying is made up of women. So is this a retreat? Is it, I mean, so am I suggesting that, men, we should just retreat? No, I think that this is my personal opinion now. I think that to say that, to try at this juncture, to try to get the church on a trajectory where you are you're equipped to address the needs of men. I don't think, I think we're far too late. I think we're past that time now. That's just my opinion. I think we're past that time right now. So so now when I look at the black church, I don't necessarily see it as a organization that's for the whole family. I see it as something that's exclusively for women, primarily for women, and then secondarily for children. Because primarily the preacher, whoever is preaching at the pulpit, he, in some cases, she is preaching to a majority woman or audience that's made up of mostly women. Then for the children, well, guess what? They got children's church. So they got something separate for the children. But what do they have separate for the men? In many churches, they don't. So this is something I wanted to really, I've talked about this in the past, and I'm gonna keep on mentioning it because this is just the new reality that we're in right now. And I think first and foremost, the focus should be on repairing the man in the home. It's not that we got to get all these men and get them back in the church and then find some kind of way. Well, maybe we can do some functions where we had the men. No, I think we're past that time now. I think now we got to get all the way to the bedrock. We got to get to the foundation and finding ways to repair the men that are outside of the church. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't think the church has the solutions as we have learned to believe, all this time, because another thing that men like to do is we like to ask questions. We like to ask a lot of questions. And a lot of times we can get pretty, when I say aggressive, I don't mean aggressive in the sense, I mean aggressive like men, a bunch of men watching football aggressive. That's what I mean. I don't mean like I got my fist and I'm ready to go upside your head. I'm talking about, like, for example, like the guy that the other day, the videos that I did, what was it, last week? The African dude that had some stuff to say about Black Americans or whatever. He's lumping everybody, Black Americans and Africans together. Remember that? Now, I was being very nice, and I was not at all. I didn't call him any names. I didn't do anything like that. But I had quite a few women leaving comments either here or on TikTok with thinking that, well, why you got to come up to him that way? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I wasn't even saying, I didn't insult him or anything. If at the end I was like, hey, I would love to talk to you. I would love to have a open conversation for you because I think this will be a great conversation. But I will tell you that some of the things that you're asserting here, they're not accurate. And I would love to be able to have the conversation so you can hear another perspective on that. And, and we can do it on your platform, my platform. I don't care. I would love to do that. And then I realized that a lot of people aren't used to seeing it. In a very stable, we're going to have a very stable and calm conversation, but we may get a little, it may seem like it's getting a little heated, but I'm not going there to make an enemy. I'm not going there, I'm going to start a fight. I'm going to tear down this African. No, I'm not going there like that. I just want to hear you out. And I hope and pray that you hear me out. And whether if you agree or disagree, that's besides the point. And the equation, and as I equate it to a bunch of men watching football, sometimes, man, men can get kind of boisterous, we trying to, no, that was such and such. No, you're not, we start going back and forth. But at the end of the day, we're like, okay, cool. See, in the church, that's not, there you go. Someone said passionate. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. See, in the church, that's not welcomed. It's not welcome to passionately disagree with the pastor. That's not welcomed. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, if the pastor says something and he's off base on something, it's not welcome for a man or men to say, you know what, Pastor, let's get together. Hold on. Now, you said this, but I'm looking in the Bible here, and it ain't matching what you're saying. Most importantly, it ain't matching what you're doing. And so what would the pastor say in that particular case? You better get out of here. Get thee behind me. See, Satan has filled some of these men in us. See, he's filled amongst us. See, Satan comes in the form of all kinds of stuff. See, you think Satan has a pitchfork and all that, but sometimes he show up as some of these black men. You see what I'm saying? I've seen it. As soon as a man wants to passionately say, hey, listen, nah, you wrong. Now all of a sudden it's demons. So this is another reason why you're not going to see men in those spaces. So my perspective now is this. Okay, fine. Then that's not for us. That's fine. But what I do want to focus on is, okay, men, let's make sure we get this definite. What is a man? What do men do? What attracts a man in terms of what gets his engine going? It's when he's actually doing something, not sitting around and just talking all the time. I couldn't live like that. But there is a demographic who's okay with that. And I say, let it be. It's simple as that. So now when we look at the black church now, maybe this will give you a different perspective on how to perceive what the black church really is. And in my opinion, like I said, again, I think it's at the end of the day, it's a women's organization. And that should definitely be something that we just keep in mind, especially during this political season, because you're going to see a lot of these churches going to that. Now, even though many of these churches are led by men, it's women who are the ones that are really turning the neck, so to speak, in many of these cases. If you think for one moment that these pastors are just getting up and just declaring and decreeing and that's it, and they're not paying attention to the women, listen, they better pay attention to the women because, again, according to the numbers, that's where a lot of their salary is coming from. You understand what I'm saying? So they better be paying attention to that. So it's very important, I think, to at least think on these things, have these conversations as it pertains to how we perceive what the black church is now, because that way we know what we're dealing with. See, for me, that helps me to understand, okay, I know what I'm dealing with now. Now, notice I didn't say anything at all negative. I didn't say, women, they just taking over and they just driving us out. No, that's what it is. Same thing I went, when we looked at the history of the Hebrew movement, it didn't really start in Harlem, but, it really got its boost in Harlem. And they said in themselves, in their own writing, they said that a majority of the congregations were made up of women. And and they said the leadership was made up of mostly men. What do you see today? It's the same makeup. And I think this helps us out as people to be able to my expectancy, now I have a clearer expectancy for the black church. You know what I mean? Now, I expect when it comes to issues pertaining to women and children, the church is fully prepared for that. And they're able and capable of being able to address that. But when it comes to issues pertaining to men, I absolutely do not look to or expect that the church is prepared to handle the affairs of men, particularly black men. And some people may say, well, at one time it did. Well, did it? I mean, let's be for real. Because I think at a time, men, we can be compliant up to a certain point. After that, we're just like, this ain't working for me because I'm up here falling asleep. You know what I mean? Because I ain't doing nothing. So it's something I think is worth your consideration as we're looking at things. Because again, as men, what we do is when we go into a situation and it seems like things are a little bit like scattered and off, what we typically like to do is say, okay, let me just straighten this out here so we can better understand what this really is. And I think in a small way, that's what I'm doing here when it comes to what is the Black church and how should we perceive it. And I personally think that this is how we should perceive it. And that's what it should be. 70%, according to that Pew Research, 70% is made up of women. I mean, I personally think the leadership should reflect that. I don't see why would be an issue, in 2024. I understand all the different nuances and stuff that brings into it, but that's pretty much a majority there. You know what I mean? And I just say, let it be. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't, but as men in of itself, we still, don't mean we have to focus on how do we do the repair work and in all the heavy lifting in the communities and stuff like that. If it ain't the church, then what? You know what I'm saying? So those are things, and there are men out there that are doing things like that. They're not accomplishing these things in the confines of the church. They're accomplishing in the confines of their own organizations, their own businesses, and as individuals, and so those are the things that we have to get. So just because you don't see men in the church, it doesn't mean that those men aren't doing anything. There are many men out here that are doing a lot of good things. And I would also argue too that there are a lot of churches out here that are made up of mostly women that are doing some good things in the community too. It's just that the churches are more geared towards women. So now when we look at the church, I believe we have to see it as a women's organization and just keep it moving. I think if we can become honest and acknowledge and admit to that, I think it will help us to shift our expectation to other things that can be, where, okay, women got that. Okay, what can we do as men? You know what I mean? And we can just get it together. You know what I'm saying? And move on. So there you go. So, all right. So we're going to move on to the next topic here. And again, I just realized I had that on there. For those that are just joining us, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you. And for those that are in the chat, so glad to see you guys here as well. Sabbatry, we just launched our back to school immunity sale. So make sure you check that out because it's 18% off of everything in the store. 18%. You can't beat that. So make sure you check that out. Again, the website is sabbatry.com. All right, let's move on here to the next topic. This is a video that I came across, and I think it kind of fits into what we were just talking about. This is a video, is a short clip of Cam Newton. He has a podcast, and he's having a conversation with Kirk Franklin. Now, I would play the clip, meaning you can see the video, but I don't know if Cam got some kind of lockdown on his videos, so I'm not going to take that chance. But I think it's just as important if you just hear it. I think you'll get the spirit and the context of what's being said here. And I'll play it twice just to make sure you hear it and you got everything that's being said here. Okay, so let me go ahead and turn this volume up here. And let me play the clip here. This is, again, Kirk Franklin. He's having a conversation with Cam Newton. And the topic is what Kirk Franklin is the angle he's going at is he's saying that marriage has been weaponized in Western Christianity. He starts off saying Western Christianity, but it quickly goes into really talking about the Black church. So let's take a listen to this conversation, and then we'll just continue from there.
I believe that marriage has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Giving has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Sexuality has been weaponized. For example, any woman listening to this can attest in our culture. Don't be no 30, 35-year-old single Black woman and go to the family reunion. All the older women are gonna do them, they're gonna look at you and wonder, why you not married?
Where your man at? Where your kids at?
Like it's a prerequisite for identity and value, that if you don't have a man, if you don't have kids, that something about you is broken. Do you understand how dysfunctional these messages are?
Yeah.
and how we super spiritualize these messages. Paul said, but marriage is a necessary distraction. I have many friends that were in ministry at church, and the church has told them, if you're gonna be in ministry, you can't be single. We're not gonna let you work with the youth ministry if you're single. You can't do this if you're single. And so what people do, they quickly get married thinking that they're fulfilling God's will for their lives, but they are fulfilling man's dogma. You can be single and be used by God. You can be single and have purpose. Being married is not a prerequisite for God's hand on your life. It is not, but we've weaponized it. And then crucify people. Where my camera at?
Right there.
And then crucify people when those same marriages don't
Fail.
Okay, I'm gonna play it again. Let's play it again so to make sure you guys hear it. Okay. All right, let's play it again.
I believe that marriage has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Giving has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Sexuality has been weaponized. For example, any woman listening to this can attest in our culture. Don't be no 30, 35-year-old single black woman and go to the family reunion. All the older women are gonna do nothing. They're gonna look at you and wonder, why you not married?
Where your man at? Where your kids at?
Like it's a prerequisite for identity and value. That if you don't have a man, if you don't have kids, that something about you is broken. Do you understand how dysfunctional these messages are?
Yeah.
And how we super spiritualize these messages. Paul said, but marriage is a necessary distraction. I have many friends that were in ministry at church, and the church has told them, if you're gonna be in ministry, you can't be single. We're not gonna let you work with the youth ministry if you're single. You can't do this if you're single. And so what people do, they quickly get married thinking that they're fulfilling God's will for their lives, but they are fulfilling man's dogma. You can be single and be used by God. You can be single and have purpose. Being married is not a prerequisite for God's hand on your life. It is not, but we've weaponized it. And then crucify people. Where my camera at?
Right there.
And then crucify people when those same marriages don't
Fail.
Okay, now I'm gonna play it again, but then I'll stop it along the way. Okay.
I believe that marriage has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Giving has been weaponized in Western Christianity. Sexuality.
Okay, so when has it been weaponized? You know, the marriage. Yeah. Giving. Yes, absolutely. And when he says sexuality, my question is, what do you mean by that? Now, he gave an example, but this man does have a track record of being kind of A-okay with the LGBT thing. And I've seen interviews where he talks about that as well, where he's, you know, pretty open on that line, you know, so. And I think if I recall correctly, he was talking about how can the church preach against LGBT, but you have them in your choirs and stuff like that. So I can agree with that. I can agree with that. But then there's some, you know, but where do you as an individual fall on that? You understand? Do you see what I'm saying? This is what I was touching on earlier as far as how, you know, certain scriptures can be reinterpreted based on the situation. Like if a church needs a good singer and the only good singer you got in your congregation is a homosexual man, you're gonna be like, well, we can look past that and go, you know. But what does the Bible say? Is the Bible absolute when it comes to that kind of lifestyle? Well, yeah, it is. You know, so but anyway, so I just wanted to raise that. Let's move on.
Has been weaponized. For example, any woman listening to this can attest in our culture. Don't be no 30, 35-year-old single black woman and go to the family reunion. All the older women are gonna do nothing. They're gonna look at you and wonder, why you not married?
Okay, so let's stop there for a second. So he's talking about family reunions. I thought we were talking about churches. So now you're talking about a cultural thing, all right? And he did mention the fact that he said that, you know, he's saying like older women, he said you go to the family reunions and he said the older women, you know, these women are going to come up to you, to the women who are single and say, why are you not married? Now, that gave me some pause there for a second, because Nicole and I, we was actually talking about this earlier. If we're talking family reunion, yeah, it's usually going to be the grandmothers, that level, that's going to have those kind of questions. Usually that's, that's a whole different generation. All right, that's a whole different generation of people. But in this day and time, people aren't really asking that. Not really. You know what I mean? Because everyone's kind of trying to go the opposite way and say, you don't need a man. You know what I'm saying? So what he's saying is somewhat correct, but I would say it is somewhat dated, because I don't think that's really the thing now. You know what I mean? Because this is a man that grew up in the church, so he's given a perspective of someone who did see that, like I did. I remember seeing or hearing things like that, but that's not really, I don't think that's really the case now. But let's continue.
Your man there. Where your kids at?
Like, it's a prerequisite for identity and value that if you don't have a man, if you don't have kids, that something about you is broken.
All right, let me stop there. So we talked about this. I was sharing this with Nicole. I said, the other thing you have to keep in mind too, when you would hear older people talking like this, you got to understand where they're coming from. See, there's nothing wrong with encouraging marriage. See, we live in a world right now, and this is, I think, what kind of set me off. When I say set me off, not in any kind of anger or anything like that, but I saw the reactions that I saw a lot of these women that would say, yeah, that's right, you tell them, and that's right. It was kind of like along the lines of, that's right, because we don't need a man, that kind of thing. And first, the perspective of these older people, they're coming from a time where they understood the value and importance of marriage. So marriage in of itself, and I'm not saying he's saying this, okay? So don't jump in my comments and say, well, you interpreted him wrong. No, I'm not saying, there's nothing in here where he's saying that marriage is a bad thing. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is this, is that you have to understand part of the perspective of these older people who at one time would promote that, because, there is a value to getting married. There is a value of having children because of the fact that that's how you grow a culture. You understand what I'm saying? That's how you grow a culture. That's how you grow a people, is by getting married. And that's and that was their perspective then. But now we live in a society where it's like, nah, we don't need to do that. Now, white people out here today are talking about how their numbers are going down. And guess what? Now we got black folks out here saying, well, we don't need to have children either. It's like, we do everything that they do. And it's like, nah, if anything, this is a golden opportunity for us to, why we should value marriage and having children, because this gives us an opportunity to really boost up our numbers up for real. But instead, we're following what they're doing. It doesn't make any sense. But let me continue to play what he's saying here.
Do you understand how dysfunctional these messages are?
Yeah.
And how we super spiritualize these messages. Paul said, but marriage is a necessary distraction. I have many friends that were in ministry at church, and the churches told them, if you're going to be in ministry, you can't be single.
Now, going back to what I said earlier, when he said now he switched back to the church. We went from the family reunions, now we're at the churches. And he's saying the churches are telling, he has many friends that said that if you're going to be involved in ministry, you have to be married. I've heard things like that. Now, here's the thing. We just looked at the demographics. We're talking upwards to 70% of the churches are made up of women. So what we're really talking about is there's a high probability that his friends are being told by women that they need to hurry up and get married. So I'm just pointing that out because that's a separate conversation that does need to be had if that is something still going on. I haven't been part of the church in years, but if he's talking about something that's currently happening now, then that is so why is it that we have this, where we do have within that structure, what we're saying is a women's movement or women's organization. Why do we have women encouraging or pushing for young men or young women, you need to hurry up and just get married? Why is that? I think that's a discussion that needs to be had within that structure. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see now why I'm doing this kind of separation here? And we're just bringing a little bit of order here. And we're saying, okay, first this is a women's organization. Okay, now this is an issue that I think this women's organization, they may need to look into. So I can't vouch for if what Kirk Franklin is saying, is he referring to the present or is he referring to something in the far past? In the far past, I can say, as someone who used to be a part of the church, that yes, I do recall men and women saying that. But, you know, demographics have changed now. And so I don't know if it's still going on or not. But in any event, his point as far as, pushing people to get married or whatever without, just for looks sake, that is wrong. And that's what he's basically saying too. That's a wrong thing to do. And to also try to say that God can't use you or whatever, can't use you unless you are married. That type of advice sounds like it's coming from someone a lot older who's coming from a different time, because of course I personally believe that anybody, regardless if you're married or single, I think you can be of a great value to society. I don't think marriage is an absolute requirement for everybody, because quite honestly, I think there's numbers of people who aren't prepared for it. It's preparation that goes into that. You don't just do it just because it looks good. That's what the church push, and that's what he's saying. But no, you have to be prepared for it. And anyway, let me finish it out here.
Not gonna let you work with the youth ministry if you single. You can't do this if you single. And so what people do, they quickly get married, thinking that they're fulfilling God's will for their lives, but they are fulfilling man's dogma. You can be single and be used.
Okay, so he said man's dogma. Now we do have to point to scripture on this for a moment, because it's dogma based on scripture. Because the scripture talks about, Proverbs 31, how many times have people have quoted backwards and forwards, upside down, right side down, whatever, Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31 is all about a married woman. And that's been the goal. That's been a gold standard put out there for all women to achieve. Again, I'm not saying if you've taken the time to read Proverbs 31, it's a lot of great things in it. But the central theme of Proverbs 31 is that this woman is married. So yeah, of course, it's going to be part of the dogma, and so that's just part of it. But what he's talking about, and this is another point that my wife and I was bringing up. We were saying how what he's saying on the cover isn't false. He's not saying anything that I would say outwardly that, oh, he's off on this one. Not really. I think what he's saying on the cover is false. But what I think is that there's an assumption being made that a lot of these listeners are going to interpret what he's saying correctly. Meaning that, like I said, if you go through the comments under this particular video, there was so many of these women that took what he said and ran with it. Like, basically what they took away from is, we don't need to be married. It was that kind of thing. So it triggered, it kind of rallied up the women that, again, that have their views about women, about men, and, they don't need a man and all that stuff. And so that's what, in this case, I was seeing a lot of that. And I saw this one guy, that black guy, that tried to say, well, same thing I'm saying is that what he's saying on the cover is correct, but there's just a lot of assumption being made that the people who are listening to this, they're going to actually hear what's being said here. And he was getting attacked for it by mostly women, And so yeah. So anyway, let me close it out. I don't know if he had anything else on here.
By God, you can be single and have purpose. Being married is not a prerequisite for God's hand on your life. It is not, but we've weaponized it. And then crucify people. Where my camera at?
Right there.
And then crucify people when those same marriages don't
fail.
Well, he's right on that, but you can't. In other words, when people get married, they get married on their decisions. We can't, because I almost feel like he's trying to make an out for a lot of these pastors who end up in these trashed up marriages, these fake marriages. I understand what he's saying, but there's agreement on both sides. You know what I'm saying? And, I'm aware, you got pastors' wives who have already made arrangements that say, listen, you can do and lay with whoever you want to, but just long at the end of the day, I get this, I get this, I get this, I get that. There's a lot of that goes on. There's a lot of that goes on. Because a lot of times people look at these pastor wives, and like, well, how could you deal with this all these years? Because they were they had their arrangements, it's pre-arrangements. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be, if Kirk going to bring that up, he's got to bring that up, that part of it up too. You know what I'm saying? But all in all, I thought that what he was saying, like I said again, I thought it wasn't on the cover. It wasn't anything necessarily off what he was saying, but I think it unfortunately it sent up a green flag for people who are looking for a reason not to be in support of marriage. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if Nicole, did you want to comment on this?
Just go ahead. Yeah.
I'm finished. I was going to move on to the next thing.
You ready to move on?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I'll just comment for a second.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm repeating anything you said because. Oh, okay.
Just put it down.
It's already down. It's already down. So I missed a lot of what you were saying, you know what I mean, about this, even though we talked about it earlier, but I missed a lot of what you're saying, what you said. Did you know that the interview that Cam Newton had with Kirk Franklin was almost 3 hours? Mm-hmm. It was almost 3 hours. And so when I saw you starting this clip, I said, you know what, let me go see if there's some blanks that weren't filled in, you know what I mean, by that little, what was just posted on Twitter. And so I went and I just kind of skimmed through, okay, because again, it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. But one thing that Kirk Franklin said in there, it was a quote from, I'm not sure when exactly, I don't know if it was like really recent or not, but he said, who am I? Kirk's talking about himself. He said, who am I when I'm well? WELL. Because I've only known myself broken. So who am I when I'm well? I don't know that person, right? Because I've only ever known myself broken. And he and Cam Newton were just talking about, listen, man, we just all broken. We just all broke up. We just broken, man. You know, we just broken, and that's just what it is, you know, and that kind of thing. And then there was another quote where he was talking about his birth mother and where his biological mother, and he told her, you not knowing how to love made me not know how to love. Right. And so I think these and then he goes on, he talks about his wife and, you know, how she was instrumental in helping him, you know, heal and things like that. But, you know, I think it's a dangerous cliff when you have people who you're saying, and earlier in the interview, he talks about how, look, man, I'm just the messenger. I'm not the message. I'm not the message. Don't look at me. I'm not the message, you know, and basically it's like this thing, like I'm flawed. I'm going to mess up. I'm not going to do this thing right. Don't look at me. Listen, we just a bunch of broken people, and it's that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? And so when you, and he said something else where he said, you know, if we're going to have a God that rocks the culture, we're going to have to get rid of some of this stuff. We're going to have to, you know what I mean? Like, you know, this faith, so to speak, is going to have to change. Kirk has always been a character that rides with the culture. Always. You know what I'm saying? That's always been his thing. He was always, you know, a singer, a person that was always trying to like bridge that gap between gospel and secular and that kind of thing. So that's always been his thing. You know what I'm saying? Always been his thing. And so for him to say something like that, and I don't know if you already touched on this, Dwayne, but did you touch on, you know, when you give when you say something like that, you don't know if the people receiving it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If they're balanced. But I have to go another further. You don't know if the person giving the message himself is healed and whole, right? Because he's saying, I'm broken, period. I'm a mess. I'm broken. I can't. Do you know what I mean? And so things, again, I'm sure you probably already touched on this, but, as a woman, again, coming up through the church, definitely, I think the clip that you played is accurate on its face. Do you know what I'm saying? Because whether it's the 80s, the 90s, or the, early 2000s, I think we actually left the church in early 2000s, right? But that was true in terms of the pressure to be married, or the fact that is it. That is what you strive for, what you seek for. And once you are married, you've ascended, you know what I mean, to a certain acceptable level, right? In your quest, in your Christian journey, whatever. And, and I have heard churches say, oh, if you're single, you can't do this. And, you need to be married. And once you're married, then you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. Right. So that, of course, that part is garbage in terms of, saying somebody can't be used if they're single. But if you have your ear to the culture and you're aware of what's happening right now in the Kamala era and everything else, it just gives a reason, you know what I mean, for people who are broken in an area of whether the mother wasn't on point, whether the father wasn't there, whether they've seen, brokenness. Now, if you're talking about women, whether they've been broken by men, whether they've been broken by the father, by the uncle, by the whatever. And so when you when you hear something like that, what it does is it validates what you already believe in your brokenness about men and them being unnecessary or a weight. You know what I'm saying? Not a benefit. And so, yeah, I think it's a slippery slope, but I think at the end of the day, if you are described as broken and I'm just a mess, you probably don't need to be out here, lecturing on what needs to be. That doesn't mean you need to be perfect, but I personally think you need to have a demonstrated track record of success in certain areas before you start putting your mouth on what needs to be here and what needs to be there. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I just saw it was a news article and the headline was Kirk Franklin says the church uses marriage as a weapon. Do you understand what I'm saying? So like those headlines are just able to be used by whomever, wherever, whatever, to just to pile on to things that don't help build families, which build communities. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's just my feedback. I might actually maybe watch the whole interview. Maybe. You know what I'm saying? Just to see, maybe. But again, it was almost 3 hours. But yeah. So,
Well, good. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But yeah, exactly. Kirk has shown that, and it's come out in many interviews that he himself has, he's got a whole set of issues and it's, as we all do. But the thing is that the thing I've always questioned is, how can someone still committing these things produce what we call anointed music? And I know people say, well, the Bible says the gift of God is given without repentance, but where do you draw the line with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, there are pastors out here that are preaching fire, but they're sleeping with in and out of beds of different women. And people say, oh, but he was just so anointed. What is anointing? We even did a video on that. What is anointing? You know what I mean? So, these are really interesting things there that, I mean, you can go really far with that conversation, but I thought that was pretty interesting. I wanted to mention that because I saw where that conversation was going. I was like, let me look into this a little bit further. So anyway, so there you go. So those are the two main topics that we want to hit. And as a bonus, we're going to take a look at this. This is I came across this video very recently. This comes to us by way of the Center for Immigration Studies. And these two women, black women, actually are looking into, or have taken the time, and they've looked at the impact of illegal immigration on black folks. And I thought it was a really great presentation. We're not going to play the whole thing. We'll just play part of it so you get the gist of what they're saying. And then you'll hear, there's some other people in it. But I thought it was a very good conversation, because this is a part of this overall conversation, that black folks are having across the nation right now when it comes to, voting for Kamala or whatever. Is that the impact of immigration. And a lot of these people that are rah-rahing Kamala, they're leaving this part out because this immigration thing is really having a negative impact on black folks and black Americans. And it's something that we do need to talk about. So let me play for you these two clips here. I thought it was really good. And let's take a listen here and let's go. All right. Oh, I turned the volume down. How about that? You ain't gonna get far with that. All right.
Studies is a nonprofit, non-political group. We don't endorse candidates, although people are free to endorse any party or candidate they want. The center does not get involved in that. And I had a question about politics, but first I want to ask a question that somebody had sent in, and that is that a significant phenomenon that was true 100 years ago, but much more significant now, is black immigration. In other words, immigration from the Caribbean and from Africa in a very significant way, both legal and illegal. There's significant illegal immigration now, even from Africa. So what, how does that create, what's the story with that? In other words, what is people's reaction? How do you kind of process that? Because when it was immigrants from Europe, you can sort of see that's what Booker T. Washington was reacting to, Frederick Douglass, A. Philip Randolph. And if it's, illegal aliens from Latin America, again, you can sort of see there's a ethnic difference. But how do you process black immigration?
Well, even Marcus Garvey, who was originally from Jamaica, was against mass
and was deported back to Jamaica.
Yeah, he was against mass immigration. Yeah, listen, it's about heritage. It's about our lineage. Who are we? We're Black Americans. I can trace my family back, my ancestors back to the 1700s, okay? So we're Black Americans. We have been here since the founding of the country. That matters, does it not? Does it matter that our parents, our ancestors were here since the founding, since the 1600s, since the 1700s? Is that relevant? Is that significant? Yes, I think it is.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Look, people who break the law. I don't care if you're orange.
Right.
If you come over here, you come over here illegally, you're still taking a job. Let's keep in mind that you have employers who will preference illegal immigrants over natural citizens, and that is still the case even if their skin is darker than mine. So it's still hurting everyone. And then a lot of the illegal immigrants that come over here and their skin is dark, they don't see themselves as being the same as I am. They don't identify with the Black American experience.
Because they have their culture.
Because that's completely different. And so that still has a significant impact on the financial stability and ability of individuals who come from that lineage in the American experience, their ability to pull themselves out of the lower rungs of society.
Donna and Kathleen, your comments are very much consistent with comments that were made by black leaders and black newspapers 100 years ago. Du Bois, at the same time he was making the comment, they said that the cutting off of white labor has been the salvation of black workers. But at the same time, in that same article, he said, he did kind of say, unfortunately, sort of had a little race consciousness. He says, unfortunately, that means blacks from the Caribbean are cut off too. But he goes, he distinguished that was a racial issue, but African Americans are not about race; it's about history. And the key thing was the history was the people whose families came through slavery, and for so the point of these black leaders and newspapers 100 years ago was that immigration policy should be about helping African Americans, not based on their race, but based on their experience,
Their heritage.
and it had not their heritage, and it had nothing to do with helping somebody who happened to be black from some other country.
Right.
So anyway, that it's just very interesting hearing your talk because it fits so much with whether basically. I'm sure that you can find leaders that were more race conscious, but one of the things that I found in some of my recent studies is that the black leaders and editors, they work so hard to really get away from racial distinctions and idea of race, because that was something that this whole idea of scientific racism had been so harmful to African Americans. And as it turns out, the scientific community eventually got out of that.
Well, I mean, my ancestors didn't slave and sweat and toil and all that hard work that they did for Joanne Reed to have a job. She's from the Congo. They worked for Black Americans to have jobs. They did all that for Black Americans, not people from the Congo who are first generation Americans. Not even Kamala Harris, who's Indian American and Jamaican.
Right.
My ancestors didn't work for Kamala Harris to have these benefits. They worked for Black Americans to have benefits. I think even Obama is not even a Black American. This is why using color, the skin color, is not sufficient.
It's American experience.
It's confusing.
Right.
And this is why I say white Americans and Black Americans have been in America the longest since its founding. And that is significant. That matters. That history matters. And so this is why, and I don't know why so many, and I want to get into this issue about Black women, Black American women supported. I know it's nonprofit, but Black American women don't understand most of them, some do, but most of them don't understand. They think everything is about skin color. And that's a superficial analysis of the situation. They're not looking at the history. They don't know the history. And they're just so wedded to the political left position, embracing all of their policies. And their policies have been detrimental to Black America. They need to get away from that embrace of all these policies that are the detriment. So what I'm thinking, they're not doing their homework. They're not reading this cast your bucket where you are. Cast down your bucket where they're not reading this history. They're being superficial. They're just watching the television and going along with what the politicians say. That is not sufficient.
This raises a point I wanted to bring up, a question basically, and it's really,
I'll just stop it there, but it's a part of a really, I think, a great discussion. And this is the Centers for Immigration Studies. I'll put the link in the chat for you if you're interested in following that discussion. I think it's a really good discussion to hear that, and she's absolutely right. I mean, a lot of what you're hearing as far as this whole, pouring out of support for Kamala Harris, is the fact that it's mostly centered on, what she looks like. But when it comes to her policies, I've seen men trying to say, well, no, she did do things for black people or whatever. And every policy that they point to is something that we're a catch-all. In other words, it's like the policy, even though it wasn't specifically for black people, black people also are impacted by it as well. But the argument that a lot of people are bringing up is not no, we're not talking about catch-all policies. We're talking about very specific policies along the same vein as how you're very specific when it comes to AIPAC, when you're very specific about Jews, when you're very specific about Asians, when you're very specific about even, to a certain extent, people coming over from the southern countries like Mexico or some of these other countries where their people are coming over here illegally. But when it comes to Black Americans, absolutely not. There isn't anything specific. I just heard, what was it, yesterday? They said that Beyonce is going to actually perform live at the Democratic National Convention. So that's your policy right there. You're going to get a free Beyonce concert. I mean, and I sit back and I'm just like, my goodness, I'm like, are people not paying attention to these details here? Do you not realize that by pushing these policies, and Kamala is very open when it comes to what she's for, she's very pro LGBT. And again, I'm not saying you got to go with the other guy, but don't go with the person that's on the cover telling you, hey, this is the policies I'm going to push. Because again, if you're pushing DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you're pushing those policies, by default, these Black women that are all revved up, you are by default you're making it harder for you and your daughters in the future. Because now somebody can come in and say, I identify as a Black woman, or I identify as a woman. So now you're going to be competing with men and women for the same job. But you try to bring this up into its most simplest forms, and they don't want to hear it. You hate Black women. How dare you bring this up? I was going to do a video. One day I'm going to do a video where I went through. I'm gathering information up right now. Do you guys know that mayor up in Chicago? She calls herself super mayor. But anyway, I don't know her name, but it's up in Chicago, suburb of Chicago. And the people have been trying their best to get this woman thrown out because she's just running that like some kind of a gangster, And long story short, there was this guy, there was an interview that I was watching. Oh, can I find that for y'all real quick? If you're still on, let me see because I thought this was very significant what this guy was saying. Let me see, watch later. No, it'll be on my playlist. Okay, let me see here. This was a guy, someone did this
Meet
interview.
The Hanso Pergo.
Sorry, y'all. Let me see. Because you really need to hear this. If not, I'll just tell you about it. Well, there's two things I'll tell you too. Phil Scott of African Diaspora News Channel. Make sure if you haven't seen this video, make sure you watch this one here. This was a recent one. It's called Sound Off Friday. Former California probation officer shares how Vice President Kamala Harris harmed Black families. And she's giving details. She's giving details on this. Let me see if I play a little bit. Let me see. Hold on.
You wanted for, and they never really told us. They said we were instructed to do this. And we say, what happens to the child? After the election, Trump said, no, come to court and stand in front of a judge and had to sit in the hearing with CF Child and Family Services.
Hold on, y'all. I'm just trying.
Community, and now that you see all these Black people talking about Black men for Harris, Black women for Harris, raising all this money, and you got to kind of see.
I'm just gonna play a little bit.
I mean, what is your opinion of that?
Honestly, I cannot. I had somebody close to me really say, please vote for her. I said, I cannot.
Okay, let me go back. Because I want y'all to hear.
What happened?
It was something.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
And you did show up to a hearing. They
Aaron in jail. What happens to the child?
And somebody in the family, you're working and you're trying to take care of the kids. You just didn't have time to call in. Parent can't get off work. You know, a lot of these parents work.
I'm not doing a good job on this, but I'm gonna tell you in a moment. Let me just let her play here for a minute.
They had to work 2 jobs just to make it. And the parent gets off work, sees, oh, I missed the hearing. Well, guess what? You didn't show up. So they send an officer to your house to write you a citation for $500. You got to go. The kid doesn't go to court. The parent's going to court. So the parent goes to court. And if you have 3 children, and I saw this a lot. If you have 3 children, and maybe one of them was sick and the other 2 caught it, and you're working and you're trying to take care of the kids, and you just didn't have time to call in, that's $500 per child. In one instance, that's
child?
Per child. If you have 3 kids and all 3 of those kids miss those days, that's $1,500. That's what was going on back then.
And I would just encourage you, I'll just stop it there because I want y'all to go to his channel and then you can watch it, the rest of it there. But she was going in and a probation officer, and she was giving a lot of details and talking about, because she was there before and after, or during and after Kamala was there. And she was talking about how the system, when she came in, the system was already kind of going south. But when Kamala came in, she put it on. Put the pedal to the metal, where it was almost like it was pitched as an incentive for the system to penalize these parents, you know, for not having their children in school. And what she's talking about is, see, a lot of times people hear that and they think that, well, these parents are just too lazy and they ain't trying to. No, what this lady was explaining was that in many of these cases, a lot of these parents, they just don't have the ability. You know, maybe they need transportation and all that. Maybe the buses don't go to where they live, you know, so that the children can get to school. And so she was going in and just really talking about how it's all set up. Like, okay, now if you going out there and you snatch these children, you're going to get 500, you know, and it's like a whole scam that's set up. And the amount of black families she was saying coming in and out like that, you know, and a lot of these families can't even barely afford to feed their families. But yet Kamala's system was set up in such where on top of their poverty, now they have to pay $500 a child, like you just heard her say that. And then she was giving some more examples in there. So I would really encourage you, you know, if you're interested in that topic, to go to that and listen to that, because she really goes in some detail. So, but these are the details, again, that a lot of these people who are rah-rahing Kamala, they don't want to talk about this. They don't want to get into it. It's just about color, you know. And then the same thing about the whole immigration thing. Getting back to that, I was going to play something there about, so it's Tiffany Haynard. Thank you, Drummer Praise, for getting that. Tiffany Haynard, real quick, and then I'm finished. Tiffany Haynard, what was it? There was a guy that was on the city council, or the town council, or village council, whatever they call it. He was being honest. He said, well, the reason why I elected for her to be mayor was the fact that she was young and she was a female, because I felt that it's about time we have a female run things. But he said, after the fact, I started finding out all this stuff, you know, and he was like, dang, what did I do? And he said it out his own word. Maybe next time we go live, I'll have the video queued up for you. But this is the same thing I'm hearing a lot of people now. Former governor, was it Colorado or wherever it was, Montana, Ventura, Jesse Ventura. He said, well, I just think it's about time we get a woman up there. It's not that. See, again, I want to be clear as I'm closing this out. Real men don't have a problem seeing women in leadership. I don't. I really don't. I love seeing people in leadership that know what they're doing, that can take charge and handle business. I don't care if you're a man or woman. I don't have, none of that is in me when it comes to, as a woman. No, if you know what you're doing, then so be it. I just want to get it done. You know what I mean? So that's not an issue. So don't let the media and all that try to push that on and make you think that men sometimes, or a lot of times, we got this issue with seeing women in charge. No, not real men don't have an issue with that. But at the same time, real people should be interested in character and track record. So I don't care if you are man or woman, it doesn't matter. We have to honestly look at your track record. And if your track record is contradicting what you're saying out of your mouth, then that should be an issue. So we have to. So you're gonna have to stay very vigilant when it comes to these kind of things here. And I'm glad for people like Phil Scott and some of these other people who are bringing these different things to the table so that people can hear for themselves in real time that no, this is the whole picture. And then the two women that I had just highlighted, really who delved into this topic of immigration and the impact it's having on black folks. I'm very appreciative of people like that, when we need more of that. And so this is why platforms like this are very important, and so, but again, we really appreciate you guys taking your time and stopping by and listening to this. And I hope you got something out of it. And I really enjoyed that topic that we talked about earlier, as far as the church and how we should perceive the church. How should it be perceived? And again, nothing is being blamed on you, dirty. Nobody said, no, not at all. It's just, I think we have to be honest. We have to learn how to take honest assessments of things. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you take an honest assessment, you can have an honest expectancy. Your expectancy is measured. You understand what I'm saying? But just going into something and just assuming, it just causes just more and more frustration, and it just doesn't get anybody anywhere. So anyway, if you missed that part of the conversation, I hope you go back and listen to it. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I really appreciate you guys being here. Listen, you guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your day and evening, and we will be back soon. Hopefully later on this week, we'll have some more things we'll be getting into. Make sure you dive into the community page. We always got a lot of things on there. And remember, we do have this Samba Tree sale going on right now. 18% store wide. You will save. You guys take care, and I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.